Welcome to the Lifting Cues podcast, the podcast for lifters. And is this episode ever for the lifters? Today we're going to answer a bunch of common lifting questions, a bunch of common questions that we hear all the time in the gym or see asked online, things that are still debated about between seasoned lifters, advanced lifters. You know, what kind of things work best? What should we be doing? What shouldn't we be doing? Is there anything we should or shouldn't be doing? We're going to cover that all today. I'm going to go through a list of a bunch of these common questions and debates, dive into what the science says, what the real world experience that I have myself and coaching people, and then just see what kind of rants we can go on today. So that's going to be the Lifting Cues podcast. I'm your host, Coach Quinn, aka Coach Q. I'm an online and in-person fitness coach who specializes in training and nutrition plans for strength and physique development. I've been a lifter for over half of my life, and now in my 30s, I am aspiring to become a competitive power lifter and hopefully a good one at that. So I'm going to use all of that experience from my time lifting and coaching to answer these questions, answer your cues, and give you my best cues to help you out in your journey in the gym. So let's dive right in. The first one that I'm going to ask is, are barbell exercises and compound lifts worth doing if your goal is hypertrophy? So there's an entire movement online and in kind of, I guess I'll call it like the bodybuilding space, more that compound lifts are not optimal for hypertrophy or muscle growth. Now, this is not entirely wrong. There's a lot of things about barbell exercises that aren't necessarily the best for hypertrophy. So if we want to grow muscle, we know that we want to get into the most lengthened positions possible. We want to get as much range of motion. We want to be able to emphasize the stretch on the muscle. And with a barbell, we are typically limited by the actual barbell. You think about a barbell bench press. You can only bring it down to where the barbell touches your chest. If you think about with dumbbells or a machine, I could stretch way back past my chest if I want to and if I have that mobility. So you are limited by the range of motion on the barbell. On something like a deadlift, you're really not in any lengthened position. I mean, kind of your erectors and your traps might be in some stretched positions, but you're not necessarily straining the muscle and maximizing the tension on the muscle in that stretch position, specifically for your glutes, your hamstrings, your lats and things like that, because everything is tight, everything is in the shortened position. So you're only doing really the concentric portion of the exercise. If you think about something maybe like an RDL, you can get more stretch because you're emphasizing that hamstring stretch a little bit more. So yes, there is some argument that it may not be 100% optimal if your goal is strictly muscle growth. Also, the barbell requires some stability. You have to be able to stabilize the weight. If you're back squatting, you have to be able to stabilize the weight on your back. So there is some of that maybe you can get into those stretched positions a little bit better if you don't have that stability aspect. If you pick a more stable exercise like a leg press, maybe that allows you to get a little bit more stretch. So my goal with this podcast is to give you guys actual answers. I don't want to answer every question with, well, it depends. So are barbell and compound lifts optimal if your goal is hypertrophy? Probably not. It's probably not the most optimal thing you could do. But do I think it's a waste of time? Absolutely not. I don't think that developing strength with barbell movements and learning the motor patterns that come with doing compound lifts and lifting heavy and getting strong is ever going to be a bad thing if your goal is muscle growth. So being able to learn how to stabilize as well, it will actually help you when you get to more stable exercises. I believe you will be stronger at leg pressing if you are a better squatter. You will have to learn the leg press, but I think if you can activate those stabilizer muscles and really lock yourself into that seat, it is only going to benefit you in other exercises. Also, learning how to push weight and develop force will only help you on more hypertrophy driven exercises. If you are stronger and you understand how to move and generate force better, it is only going to help you lift more reps, feel more confident pushing toward failure and pushing to higher intensities that hypertrophy demands. And then, just being able to progress further. I can progress with weight, I can progress with reps. So I never would say that it's an absolute waste of time to learn how to deadlift if your goal is to get big. And honestly, I mean, developing again a stronger posterior chain will only help you. Also, it is a great way to train your erectors. It is a great way to train your lower back, your core. So all of this musculature is going to be built, and as you progress and get heavier, there is muscle that has to be developed. So you are not wasting your time by doing compound lifts. Do you need to? Absolutely not. You can get plenty huge, plenty of people do, without ever doing a deadlift, without ever barbell back squatting, only, hack squatting, leg pressing, all those kind of different things. You don't have to do these lifts, but if you are an enjoyer of these lifts and these lifts help you to have fun in the gym and get involved in your programming and your workouts and, put some intention behind it. Like, oh, I get to go squat today. I'm excited to go to the gym. All your leg training will be better afterwards. I will also say for things like squats, anything where you're placing a load on the spine, or deadlifts, you're picking up heavy things off the floor, putting a ton of stress on your spine and central nervous system with these compound movements. Maybe we don't want to push them all the way toward failure. If you do, just be really smart about how you're training around that, because it's gonna take a lot out of you physically and mentally. So if you try to take squats really, really close to failure, it's probably going to take a lot out of you. Maybe we just design certain blocks where we know, our recovery is going to be really good, or we cut back on some of our other programming if we want to take those big lifts anywhere close to failure. So thinking about how they fit into your program is also going to be very important to your hypertrophy goals. We don't want it to be a detriment to the rest of our training. We know we have to get a certain amount of volume, a certain intensity, a certain amount of hard sets. If we don't accomplish that because we went too hard on squats and now we can't push ourselves and keep progressing in our other lifts, or we can't recover from it, then we are hurting our hypertrophy by doing these compound lifts. But there is definitely room for them. If you enjoy them, please do them, and you can build muscle. You will. You will build muscle as you get stronger. So it will not only help the actual lift will build some muscle, maybe not, the optimal amount on a deadlift building your back. You're obviously going to have to do some other things, but getting your posterior chain, your core, and just your general motor skills developed will only help you in your hypertrophy goals and in your other training. So I definitely recommend keeping your barbell lifts in, get strong, have fun with it. Don't take stuff out of your program because some bro online said it wasn't optimal. That's okay. I mean, how many people with a really high bench press do you know that have a super small chest? Not that many. I mean, so if you really like barbell benching better than other forms of pressing, please keep it in and just think about how to fit it into your program. What else do you need? We're going to need some things that stretch the chest. So we'll make sure that we get some things that stretch our pecs, stretch our front delt a little bit more, work our tricep in the lengthened position. But that doesn't mean we have to take the barbell bench press out of our program. We're going to do some form of pressing. Let it be that if you enjoy it. So if you enjoy compound lifts, definitely worth doing. I think they can lead to more hypertrophy as kind of a secondary result of getting stronger, developing that stability, the motor skills, the understanding of how to generate force. I think will help you with your other hypertrophy training, and that's really where most of the benefit will come. And then, I mean, there definitely will be, some definite muscle building from just getting stronger and getting better at those lifts, for sure. All right, the next one. Am I going to get bulky? This is a question you will hear from a ton of newbies in the gym or people that haven't really been to the gym in a really long time and are maybe just coming back to it. Definitely as a coach, you hear this a ton. I don't want to get bulky like you. I don't want to get super bulky. I'm not going to get bulky, right? If you have to ask this question, you are absolutely not going to get bulky. Getting bulky, and I'm not even going to pick on women here. I hear this from dudes all the time. Older dudes just getting back into it, or like they want to be this athletic look. Like women use the word toned, men say athletic. I want to look athletic. I want to look sleek or lean or whatever. So I'm not just picking on women here. I hear this on both sides all of the time. I don't want to get too big. Trust me, if you have to say that, you are not going to. I promise you. You have to dedicate everything to getting too big. And you are not just going to accidentally wake up one day too big. You are not just going to fall into the gym a couple times a week and be too big. It's just not going to happen. You have to train intently for years, months, time. You have to put time in the gym, progressing over and over and over again, pushing yourself intensely over and over and over again. And then you have to go home and you have to eat to recover from that. So you have to push that food. You have to push the protein, push the carbs, forcing food. You have to sleep like it's your job to do so, making sure that you're getting all of the sleep that you can, managing all of your other recovery variables. Then, just maybe, you might get too huge if the workout program is perfect and you perfectly adapt to it. You might end up at a point where you're too bulky. Well, guess what? Now we can just pull back. If you're ever at a point where you're putting on too much muscle, we can always pull that back. Trust me. The people that you want to look like and that you think you want to look like, or that have the right amount of muscle mass and leanness, is like, they're much leaner than you think they are. They look very big because they are very lean. So if you don't want to look too big, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen by accident. You have to be very intentional about it, and not the look that you want is still going to require you to lift weights and build muscle. So that's the other thing that I think people get messed up on, is they see somebody online and they think that they did it by like doing some cardio and getting some steps and eating this diet. But in reality, they put on a bunch of muscle, probably from years of working in the gym. Even if they don't look that jacked, they've probably put in a lot of time in the gym building and maintaining muscle and developing good exercise habits that keep them in a position where they can be lean. So the way that you're going to get to the leanness level that you think you want is by diet. But to actually get the look at the lean that we want and not end up being skinny fat, we have to lift and build muscle. So your training doesn't really change whether you want to get bulky or look athletic or be toned. It's about building muscle in the gym and then dieting to lose body fat, to get us to a point where we are happy and healthy walking around in our body. That is the goal. And then once you get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm at a level of leanness that I can tolerate, that I can live at, I have a decent amount of muscle mass that looks pretty good, then you can decide exactly how advanced you want to take it. How big do I want to get? Or how, but we've done that through, years of building these habits, and these habits are entrenched. We're good at working out. We understand what our body responds to. You have to learn all of these things to be able to manipulate your physique just any way you want. Is basically my point. Is you're not just going to accidentally manipulate your physique. It's a very intentional thing. So you're not going to accidentally get too bulky. You're not going to not look athletic if you don't want to. I think what happens is people end up lifting weights and not eating properly to lose the fat that they want. So they end up just getting, like, sure, there's more muscle mass, but they just feel maybe a little bit bigger, or they look bigger, and they don't want that. But then it's a problem with diet. It's not a problem with training. Training's not the issue. We're dieting the wrong way. So when you're thinking about not getting bulky, focus on your nutrition more than your training. The training shouldn't change all that much. If you want general recommendations on training, go back, listen to previous podcasts. I've talked about it ad nauseum. So we're not going to accidentally get bulky. That's basically my point there. Guys or girls, I'm not just talking to the ladies. I'm talking to you dudes out there too who want to look athletic. Guess what? The soccer players or the basketball players that you look like fucking work their ass off. Like, they work hard in the gym. So should you. Rant over for that one. All right. Is there a difference between periodizing for strength versus hypertrophy? I know I need to periodize for strength, but should I periodize for muscle growth as well? Okay, so periodization is basically just kind of how we progress our training program over different, blocks of training. A block, we'll say, is like 4 to 6 weeks, where there's a certain goal in mind, and then we progress toward another goal. So there's a few different ways to kind of, periodize your training. Usually for strength, there's like an acclimation phase, and then there's a strength building phase, and then, some sort of taper phase, and then testing. So if you're a power lifter, that's kind of how your, peak program would kind of go, whether that be like 12 weeks, 8 weeks. Your strength block would probably be 8 to 12 weeks, around there, depending on kind of what you respond to best. But there's all kinds of different variables manipulated in there. But basically, it's just a way of progressing your training to reach a certain goal. And it really does seem to be important and really work for strength. So I'll give you an example of kind of how I periodize for strength. So for the powerlifting meet, I spent 12 weeks really focusing on building my 1 rep max strength. So it was working up to heavy sets of 1, doing some back off sets, and progressing that heavier and heavier as I went, with 1 deload in the middle there, and then, at the end, I did another taper up until the meet. Now, my periodization is going very differently. So I'm pulling back and working on more of a power building sort of phase. So I'm going to spend a really good amount of time really trying to build some muscle, get stronger, but I'm going to work in some higher rep ranges because I was working so low. So now I've come up a little bit more volume, not quite as heavy, still pushing pretty heavy, but focusing on a lot of accessory muscle building to try and get bigger so that when I go into the next strength block, I'm stronger. So what I'll do is I'll do this for a while, this power building block, progressing it on and on until I get to my next peak block, and then, we'll kind of go from there with probably some deloads in there as well. This seems to work really well for strength because you progress to a certain point where you can't really progress any further, and then you have to adjust and periodize your training to either focus on something different or work on weak points. There's a lot of different periodization that goes into strength. But for hypertrophy, the goal is really to just continue to place mechanical tension on the muscle. So we know that if we can just push toward failure at a reasonable rate, then, periodizing for strength, we can kind of just keep doing that. We can kind of just we either go up in reps or go up in weight or increase volume. So there's not necessarily a periodizing plan per se, or something that universally works for everybody in the way that we kind of do for strength. But I do think there is definitely some periodization once you get into higher levels of hypertrophy. There's going to come a point where you haven't reached your genetic potential, because very few people ever actually reach their genetic potential as natural lifters. You have to really, really dedicate yourself to that. And even then, there's probably some different things that we could do to eke out a little bit more in certain areas. But that's kind of what I want to talk about. So once you kind of build a certain well-rounded physique, there's probably going to be some sort of weak point or lagging body part that maybe some periodization to do some specialization programs might be really, really good. Or there's just certain exercises that you can't fit into your program all the time that work a certain muscle better than others. If you're getting really serious about building your physique, there's a lot of different musculature in your lat, for example. There's all kinds of different things that you can build up. Not every lat exercise will hit that. So maybe you have to periodize in or put into some blocks exercises that work, like the iliac lat or, whatever it might be. If you really are concerned about reaching that genetic potential and developing this physique that is, just kind of really advanced and people really look at and go, oh, okay, you're a bodybuilder, even if you don't compete. So there definitely will be some periodization for that with exercise selection and being able to fit in different exercises that fit into your routine, either because you just can't handle the volume at the time, or that you need to specialize in a certain thing. So I think that's where the periodization to hypertrophy comes in. The training itself, as far as, how you're pushing the intensity and the rep ranges, it's probably not going to change all that much. Maybe you do some more strength focused training just to be able to make progress, because you've kind of stalled out in the rep range that you like to grow in, whether it's 8 to 12 or whatever it might be. Maybe you're just okay, I've kind of tapped out at the weight in this range, so let me cut back, get a little stronger, and then I'll come back and see if I can do some more and get some more out of that. So maybe there's some periodization there as well, but I don't think it's necessarily as important as strength, or as kind of scheduled as strength. Because as you continue to develop your strength, like I said, you're pushing heavy for a certain period of time, pushing really, really heavy. But then you have to change that up, because your body can just only take so much of it. If you're still growing muscularly and choosing exercises that really work for you, that are a little easier on your joints when it comes to hypertrophy and stuff like that, maybe you don't have to switch it up for a really long time, as long as you keep manipulating either weight, reps, maybe volume goes up and down. But periodizing, I think, throughout the year to focus on some different things might help you with your muscle growth and help you continue to progress. Or if you just want to focus on, maybe there's a bulking phase of your year and a cutting phase of your year, and the training kind of periodizes seasonally based on, what you're doing. For a while there, I was I like to bulk in the fall and winter, cut in the spring, maintain in the summer. So my training kind of adapted to what I needed in those moments for diet purposes. So maybe it does seasonally just because that's how you like to train or how you live your life, how it fits into your life. But I don't think it's really necessary. The thing is we keep pushing the intensity, we maximize mechanical tension, and just make sure that we keep progressing. If you need to know how to keep progressing, go back, listen to the last episode on plateaus. I'll help you with how to progress on strength and not stall out, how to progress on hypertrophy and not stall out. But periodization, probably more important for strength than hypertrophy, but there you have it. We kind of touched on this one, but progressive overload techniques, what are they? Do I just have to keep adding weight to the bar? What happens when I can't? So what are the other progressive overload techniques besides just adding more weight to the bar? Because we know eventually that will tap out. And it's like, okay, I can't do a set of 3 with heavier weight than this. Is staying at the same weight and continuing to do sets of 3 gonna get me there? Probably not. So we have to adjust something else. So first thing we can do, adjust rep ranges. We can change the rep range, we can go lower, so hopefully that allows us to go heavier. We can't do 3 with 415, but we can do 2, so maybe we drop the rep range down, do 2. Maybe we can do 1 with 425. We work up to a heavy set of 1, back off with some sets of 3. Now, we finally get to the point where we can do 425 for 3 because we've adapted better to that weight by pushing it. We're not going to get to 425 by not doing that amount of weight. We're not going to be able to do 425 for 3 if we can't do 425 for 1. So adjusting the rep ranges would be my first thing. That might help you add weight. Also, just training in lower rep ranges may help in general, because if you're trying to train in like 6 to 8, but you're trying to work up to a heavier 1 rep max, maybe we just need to put more weight on the bar. So working in the 3 to 5 range, just to adapt to that load, finding different ways to adapt to load would be one of the first things that I would do. The other one would obviously be volume. If you have the time and the energy to put into whatever the lift is and be able to add some volume to that. Even for muscle growth, this is probably another one that would be good if you have the time. Like if you're just not putting a ton of volume into it, add more volume. So maybe that might help. It's just doing some more reps, getting better at the lift, getting better. I don't know if there's any actual science behind this. It's kind of just a theory, but I think getting better under fatigued states can help you with like a 1 rep max when you're actually fresh. If you know how to keep everything tight and execute a movement when you're fatigued, there's something to me mentally that tells me that I can do more if I'm not fatigued. So next time when I'm not, I can kind of maybe push that weight and maybe I'm able to generate a little bit more force. I can keep everything really, really tight. If I can do it under fatigue, I can probably do it better when I'm fresh. So maybe increasing volume helps there. As far as strength goes, the other thing I would do is you can adjust things like range of motion and tempo. Range of motion being if there's an area that you kind of get stuck in, try to extend the range of motion a little bit. Like if you get stuck at the bottom of a squat and you're squatting to like parallel, try doing some squats below parallel. Now, again, strength is very specific, so maybe this isn't the case, but if you feel comfortable getting lower and you can work actually through that parallel position, both on the eccentric and the concentric, I think that makes you stronger. So increasing range of motion, if you're stuck in a muscle group, find a way to increase the range of motion for sure. We know how important the stretch is. So let's try to increase that stretch on the muscle. So definitely increasing range of motion as a progressive overload technique is definitely something I would recommend. Also, with that, you're going to build more muscle, which will make you stronger. It'll allow you to generate more force. So if you can get more range of motion in your squat pattern and make your quads bigger, your squat should get better. So that is another way that you can do it. Tempo is also a great one. Slower eccentrics, really feeling into that lift. I always go for the squat as an example, probably because it's my favorite lift and I just freaking love it. But I always think about the squat. Anytime I think about lifting, it's like, how can I make my squat better? So maybe that's just a me thing, but I always relate it back to squat. When I'm thinking about tempo with squat, I'm going down really slow. I mean, you're tensing up all those muscles. It takes a lot of strength actually to fight the weight, to fight against gravity as you come down, to try and stop that. Especially if you get stuck at kind of the bottom or, just out of the hole. I think tempo can be a good way. Also utilizing things like pauses, stopping in the position that you're weakest in or the position that you always get stuck in can be a great way to, make progress as well. If you can't progress in weight, let's just try and slow the tempo down. Maybe that helps us kind of break through whatever that plateau is. So I think even with, muscle, that can be a good one as well. Slowing down that eccentric, really fighting that stretch, getting all the way to that stretch position. Maybe it helps us actually slowly get to that nice stretch, feel it, let it stretch out there for a second, and then pull back. You get maybe a good stretch reflex, or like I said, just spending more time in the lengthened position, maybe that helps kind of break a plateau. So those are some of the big ones. Last one I'll say is finding a range of motion or a variation of the exercise that you can overload a little bit better, like something like a pin squat or a rack pull. So you're not pulling the weight, you're not moving the weight as far. So maybe you can move a little bit more weight. It's kind of like putting a donut on your baseball bat. You swing it with the donut on there, and then you take it off and it feels really light. You put 600 pounds on your back, 500 doesn't feel quite as heavy. So just some things like that. But biggest thing with those is make sure that everything about the lift is still exactly the same. So you're only lowering down to maybe a quarter or a third squat, but make sure that quarter or that third is the exact same as your squat. You're not adjusting to do this other lift. Everything has to stay as specific to your lift as possible. So your setup is the same. You're not changing any of that. You're not changing your stance at all or anything, but just doing the first quarter of your squat with a heavier weight. That can be a good overload technique, definitely for strength. I don't know necessarily. Finding ways to overload the stretch position would be the equivalent for muscle. Even if it's like lengthened partials, like you can't do full reps of lat pull downs from all the way up top, but you can get to here. But now I'm spending more time in that stretch position. I think that can also be a good one. All right, next one. Endless debate here. Endless debate. And this is between seasoned lifters, non-seasoned lifters. Everybody wants to know, should I do higher volume or higher intensity training? Should I lift, I always mess this up, high reps, low weight, or low reps, high weight? Yes, got it right this time. Good. All right. Which one's better? This is the one where I'm going to say, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I used to be really, really in the camp of higher volume is better. I thought that was the answer. It's like, just do more. Do more reps. Get closer to failure. Like, you're still pushing to failure, but you're not fatiguing the body quite as hard. But then I kind of started to experiment with some high intensity training and doing actually less sets, but just taking them to absolute failure and, with lengthened partials, it's kind of when the whole lengthened partial thing started to happen. I started to utilize that a lot more in my training. Instead of doing more volume, I just did more intensity with kind of a similar volume. But even when I started doing my powerlifting training, I really cut that volume back, and I actually think I still built some muscle doing some hypertrophy accessories with just really, really high intensities. Like I would do a warm up set of like 12, then I would do a hard set of like 8 to 10, and then I would take a weight and just crush it to absolute failure. And that was like my accessory work. I would do like 3 exercises of accessory work just like that. So really just kind of high intensity. The first 2 sets were, they were hard, but they weren't hard. But then I'd take one set super duper hard, and it seemed to actually help me grow some muscle while I was kind of powerlifting training, which was really interesting because and I think it's probably because I never trained like that. It was kind of a novel stimulus. So I think that's kind of really what it comes down to is like, is this new to you? Is this something different that you're doing? Is this something your body responds to? With higher volume versus higher intensity, it's really kind of a what does your body respond to best sort of deal. Like my legs always respond to higher intensity, lower volume. Like I like to lift my legs very heavy for very small reps, and it always works. It works every time. But if I try to do that on my upper body, it just isn't quite as good. I don't know if it's because my shoulders are a little bit more beat up and they're just not quite as trained for that, or like they're not quite as capable of lifting that heavy all the time. I think that's probably a lot of it, playing football most of my life. So I like a little bit higher volume, some lighter weight. I like to kind of just rep stuff out in my upper body, and that seems to work better. So maybe it's going to differ between muscle groups for you. I know that my back, it takes a ton of volume and intensity, but it responds better to higher volume than higher weight. So, it's kind of a give and take as to what your body needs, and it really does depend on how you like to train, how your body responds, and what are you going to be able to do the hardest? What can you recover from? Are you able to recover from like a heavy set of squats to like failure? Like I'm talking like a set of 5 to failure at like your RPE 9 or 10. Like if somebody has to scoop you up from your squat, like, are you going to be able to recover from that and still get enough to grow? Like, is that good for you? Or should you maybe do high intensity on certain exercises and maybe just more volume on another? So this one really depends on you. The other thing is like, they both really work. Like, as long as you're hitting that proximity to failure and putting that tension on the muscle, then they both work. And if you're getting to high proximities to failure, you will also still build strength even at higher volumes. Now, I don't recommend necessarily just training strength at higher volumes. If your goal is strength, you're probably going to be more in the HIIT, like lower volume camp, because things are so heavy. But you also don't want to be at that intensity all of the time because it's going to be really hard to recover from. So mixing in your volume, picking your spots with your high intensity, pick your blocks that you're able to do it in. But this one, like, no matter what the guy at the gym tells you, like, he's not you. He doesn't have your body. He doesn't have your mind. He doesn't have your experience in the gym. Like, to do true high intensity training, you have to really know how to push to failure and be very confident in that. So I'd rather somebody start with higher volume, learn how to lift and push yourself toward failure and like get to failure on some safer exercises, understand what that feels like. Even get yourself, like, if you ever push heavy, squats or something, and like you fail under the bar, like, you know what that feels like. You know what true failure feels like, not being able to do a rep, having your life flash before your eyes. So getting some time to understand, I'd usually probably start somebody higher volume, teach them how to push to intensities at quote unquote safer weights with quote unquote safer exercises to push to failure. I say quotes because nothing is inherently safer or not. I mean, I think pushing squats to absolute failure, like anytime you can fail with a bar on your back, like you better have a good spotter or, a good setup that you can, bail under that weight safely. Please. Please don't try to push squats to failure without someone very experienced helping you. Or just that can literally scoop you up off the ground with weight on your back. Please, let's be smart about how we push to failure. But I think spending some time learning how to do that with higher volumes and accumulating higher volume over time is probably the better way to start until you get a very good understanding of, how to push to failure, what you can push to failure and what you can lift heavy with, what exercises kind of work best for that. And then maybe try a high intensity block at some point, see how your body responds. Or if you've been doing high volume for a long time, let's switch it. Or if you've been doing high intensity, let's add more volume. Maybe that can break a little bit of a plateau. But I don't think either of them is necessarily better or worse, especially when it comes to muscle building. So if anyone tries to have this argument with you, just say, I like what I like. It's working for me right now. Maybe I'll try something else later, but I'm good. I don't need to do your workout. No offense. All right, next one. Will cardio kill my gains? Will cardio kill your gains? So this comes from the theory of the concurrent training effect, that if you try to do cardio before or after a resistance training session, that it will impair your recovery and kill your gains. Or, your body will be trying to adapt to the cardio and not recover your muscle. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the theory, but basically it's just the recovery cost will be too high to recover from your training. My gut says absolutely not. Like, cardio will not kill your gains. I promise. Now, you have to be smart and strategic about how you do your cardio and when, and what is your goal in the moment. These things are all really good considerations, but my gut tells me that you're not training hard enough in either of them to kill your gains. And even if you are, you're probably experienced enough. Like, there's some hybrid athletes online that are serious cardio people that are fucking jacked, that work their ass off in the gym, and sure, they take their recovery very, very seriously and they're advanced at what they do, but they're still doing both. Like, you can do it, just be aware of what that recovery cost is and what your body needs to recover from both. But my guess is you're not doing cardio or strength training hard enough if you have to ask this question. If you already know the answer, if your goal, if you're pretty serious about your muscle building, you probably already know how much cardio you can do that's not going to kill your gains. The way I look at this really is, again, what is your goal at this moment? Is my goal more to either get my cardio up because my cardio sucks, or am I trying to kind of get my activity up and burn a little bit more calories throughout the day? Or is that the reason that I'm trying to add in cardio? Or am I just doing it because I think I have to work out to burn more fat? Choosing the adaptation that's most important right now. And is my goal right now to build muscle? Okay, maybe I do pull back on my cardio a little bit so that I'm able to recover. But as long as your recovery is very considered in what you're doing, then I don't think it's a big deal. And if you're not doing the cardio to, if you're not trying to do both at the same time, I'm not trying to maximize muscle growth and maximize my cardio at the same time as a general fitness person. If I'm just doing 30 minutes of incline walking at a decent pace after my workout, am I going to kill my gains? No. Like, you're fine. If you did it before and maybe you're not as conditioned for that and you're a little tired going into your strength training session, maybe that hurts your gains. But, like, again, just don't do it as hard if you have to do it before. Like, if that's the time you can fit it in before you work with your coach or before class or whatever it is, like, okay, cool, like, fit your cardio in, but just understand why you're doing what you're doing. Am I just trying to stay in like a decent zone 2, easy sort of cardio pace, just some steady state? Or am I trying to do like a full hit training workout and then trying to go lift weights as hard as I can? One of them's probably going to have to give in that scenario. Or maybe just like we do that one time a week and then the other times we just do either easier cardio or, shift your cardio to other days. But I really don't think it's a huge deal for the most part. If you can spread it out throughout the day, like do 2 different sessions, like do your lifting in the morning or go for a walk in the morning or vice versa, like, maybe if you can, but if you don't have the time, please, it's just more important to get good work in and not worry about maximizing every single thing, because if you only have a couple hours in the gym a week and it's like I got to do my strength and I got to do my cardio so I can get them both in because they're good for me, it's good for my health, I need better cardio, I just need to lift to stay relatively strong, functional, keep some muscle mass, like, you're gonna be fine. Do it. Please do both. It's gonna be okay. You don't have to be like, oh, I wouldn't dare touch the treadmill because my bicep might be a centimeter smaller. Like, cardio, it's probably not going to kill your gains. Now, again, if you have serious strength or physique goals, yes, make sure you are fresh for your lifting session. Don't do cardio before. You don't need it. Don't wear yourself out in any sort of way if your goal is very serious for strength and physique. Get your cardio in separately or, when you can. If your goals are very, very serious, unless you know for a fact, like, how you can manage your recovery a little bit better. So, good there. All right, next one. Do fasted workouts, burn more fat. I included this to do fasted workouts because I feel like I see people do both. And if you still believe the fasted cardio thing, like, I don't know if listening to me tell you again why it doesn't burn more fat is going to help you at this point. Like, if you don't understand why this is debunked by this point, that fasted workouts don't burn more fat, then, I mean, you can listen to me talk, but I don't know if it's going to get through to you because I don't know if it's anything you haven't heard before. Okay. Do fasted workouts burn more fat? You probably weren't expecting this, but technically, yes, depending on your definition of burning fat. So, in the moment, yes, if you are fasted, your body will utilize more fat for fuel. This is called fat oxidation. Your body oxidizes the fat into a source of energy that it can use because it has to, because there is less glycogen. You have less glycogen in your body to pull from in a fasted state. You only have what's stored, basically. So your body will burn through that and then start to oxidize this fat. Now, sounds great, right? Awesome. This does not mean you are losing fat. This just means that your body is oxidizing it for energy. Now, this might not make sense. Hear me out here. Okay, so you did your fasted workout. Your body used the fat for energy. So it burned it, right? Yes. Now, you go and you eat after your workout because now you're fucking starving because you fasted, worked out. You're probably going to be hungry. Okay. What happens to the food that you're eating now? You think your body's not going to restore those fat stores? Like, it's not just going to let them not be there. The only way that it helps is if you stay in negative energy balance, that you burn more than you take in. Because as you take in food again, it's just going to store fat back faster because it burned more. See what I'm saying? So, unless you're able to stay in a negative energy balance, then burning more fat during your workout is not necessarily mean you burning more fat on your body overall over the long term. So, if it does work out that you work out at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and if you don't eat breakfast, you'll eat less throughout the day. Okay, and you feel pretty good going into a fasted workout, you kind of like it. Awesome, great. Then it helps you. If you go into a fasted workout just to burn more fat, but then you're overeating later because you're starving, then it's not going to help. So it really kind of depends on you as to what's the best for you. And also, what is the goal of working out? You know, is it to maximize performance and maximize adaptation of that workout? Then you should probably be fueled with something beforehand. It's like I said, if you feel good doing a fasted workout and you're working out pretty early in the day and you just can't stomach having food because it either doesn't sit well, either A, find something that does sit well and will provide you a quicker source of energy, or yes, you can work out fasted, but just make sure that you understand what you're doing after and the night before to make sure that you're fueled and ready to go. Most of us aren't doing workouts so extreme that we need like glycogen immediately when to eat it immediately before a workout. What you've stored in the past 24 hours is probably enough to get you through it unless you're an elite endurance athlete or doing a ton of mileage, or you're like a high-level CrossFit athlete. You're doing hard CrossFit workouts. Other than that, you should have enough carbs to get you through a workout. The main thing is you don't want to be hungry and feel depleted. So getting something in your stomach so that you don't feel hungry, that sits well with you so that you're not bloated or digesting too much food, is probably the way to eat before a workout. So working out fasted is just not, it's not any better. It's not gonna, and like I said, it's actually been shown that people that eat perform better in workouts. Maybe that leads to you burning more calories or building more muscle, and that helps you, your metabolism long term. I don't know. But if you like working out fasted, do it. If it helps you maintain a calorie deficit throughout the day by skipping breakfast, getting your workout in fasted, and then you don't overeat the rest of the day, also do it. If you hate working out fasted, good news. You don't have to. So that's it. If that doesn't change your mind yet, I don't know what will. But I promise you, it's not going to do anything different as long as calories and protein are equated. All right, we're going to do one more here. All right, last one. I should feel sore if I want to get big, right? You break down muscle to build it back bigger. ? No, this is not actually true. You do not have to damage the muscle to the point where you are experiencing soreness and delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS as I'll refer to it. For those of you who don't know that term, that's what that feeling of like extreme soreness in your legs when you haven't done a leg day for like weeks, and you do one and you're sore for like 3 or 4 days. that does not mean that you've stimulated growth at all. It just means you've damaged your muscle, and probably to the point where it's actually not recovering because it is so damaged. So soreness is not a proxy for damage. Soreness is a proxy for novel stimulus. So if you haven't worked a muscle group, or you just switched exercises, and like say you went from like hamstring curls to RDLs and your hamstrings are just toasted, that does mean that RDLs are providing some sort of different stimulus that maybe you're going to have to adapt to that the hamstring curls were not. Okay, interesting. Or I can just load the RDLs much heavier. So now maybe I do need to adapt my hamstrings to RDLs, and maybe that will lead to growth, but that session itself probably didn't. You probably just did damage. So you don't have to be sore, and you actually, I don't think, should be sore after every single session. If you are, either your recovery is garbage or your volume is just entirely too high. Like you're just doing way too much. If you're sore all the time, you're doing too much. Your body is not adapting properly and recovering from the training. So you either need to pull your volume back or change the way that you're training, or look at your recovery. Are you sleeping? Are you managing your stress? Are you eating enough? All those kind of things. So definitely don't just chase soreness. Don't chase exercises just because they make you sore. That does not mean that you're necessarily growing. Your body's actually not adapting. It's just being torn down from that exercise. But I will say, like, if you're walking out of the gym after like a leg day and you're like, that was great, I feel awesome, you're probably not working that hard. So I think there's probably a level of soreness that's like, okay, this muscle worked today. Like I did a leg day today, and I'm sitting here on this bench and I can feel that my glutes they're a little bit sore. You know, I did an exercise for the back of my legs, my glutes, my hamstrings a little bit that I haven't done in a while. So, okay, I expect it to be feeling a little bit. Like I can feel it. It's not too uncomfortable. I mean, I've dealt with plenty of soreness in the past, but it's not too uncomfortable. I'll probably keep an eye on how it feels the next 2 days. Did I do too much weight for a new exercise? Did I do too much volume with a new exercise? Or is this a good exercise? Like, can I feel that, it recovered well? I felt it in the moment. Like I felt that mind-muscle connection. I felt the stretch. So maybe this is a good exercise for me to keep in. I'm not too sore, which I shouldn't be because I'm pretty well trained at this point. Like, especially because I've been doing the style of training that I've been doing for, 4 to 6 weeks now. So I shouldn't be getting too sore from like the exercises that I'm doing. Now, like I said, when I flopped an accessory, or I switched out an accessory, maybe that accessory makes me a little bit more sore. Just trying something a little different, something I hadn't done in a while. And I like to do that with my accessories from time to time. I'm getting off track. All right. So should I feel sore though? Probably like not so sore that like I can't move. It shouldn't ever feel like the first time you were in the gym. Like I said, maybe if you started a new training block, you did an exercise that you hadn't done in a while, or you went way heavier than you normally do, or you just did way more volume, sure, you will get some pretty good soreness out of that. But just chasing that is not the way to make sure that you're growing. I think the biggest thing is making sure that you're finding the exercises that work for you, that you do recover from, so that you feel that mind-muscle connection. Again, if you did a heavy quad day, you should walk out of the gym feeling a pretty good pump in your quads, like feeling like your quads did something. Like you don't really want to do another leg extension. Like the stairs, like I can take them, but I'd rather not. Like that's the kind of feeling that you're probably looking for to let you know that you put in sufficient effort, and you got sufficient stimulus to the muscle that you were trying to grow, but you shouldn't be like not able to walk every time you do legs. That's not necessarily indicative of you growing at all. So make sure that, you are managing your recovery, you're managing your volume to something that, like I said, it feels good. You know that you're growing from it because you know that you've seen this progress. You feel like you've done something. You got a good stretch in the muscle, good pump, good mind-muscle connection, all of those things. But again, don't just chase soreness because all we're doing is damaging. So one little quick other tangent. So it used to be the theory that muscle damage was part of the muscle growth process. Again, you hear that break the muscle down so that it builds back bigger. And it's kind of been shown that this isn't really the case. The main driver is just mechanical tension on the muscle. So the actual, again, literally just the tension that's placed on the muscle is what is driving the stimulus for growth. There is some, I think, something from the pump and getting blood and fluid to the muscle that is, it's some superficial growth. So it appears to be growth, but really it's just kind of swelling. I don't know if that is necessarily indicative of long-term muscle growth. So also, like, just a pump doesn't mean you got bigger, just means you're swollen. So those kind of two things I think have kind of been pulled back on as not as important because, like I said, just breaking the muscle down doesn't necessarily mean it's going to build back bigger. You need to build more contractile tissue by putting more tension on the muscle, not by breaking it down. You build contractile tissue through tension. So as that muscle stretches and has to contract, it has to develop more contractile tissue to be able to do that. So that's really what you're chasing, and you're doing that again through tension, which if you need to know how to do that, please go back, listen to the other podcasts, and that will help you. But don't just chase muscle damage. You should not be sore every single time you train. After you are sufficiently well trained, you should only be sore when you do something very novel. But working hard enough to feel the muscle and make it feel like it did something is definitely a good thing, especially the day of. That muscle group should be a little bit tired that day if you really want to sufficiently grow. All right, that's our time. I hope I answered a lot of these lifting questions, these common lifting questions, ended some debates that you hear all the time in the gym or online. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to answer your lifting cues. So if you have questions for the podcast, hit me up at CoachQ_fitness on Instagram, at CoachQ on Facebook. Send me a DM, comment on my posts. Let me know the questions that you have for the podcast, and I will make sure that I get them on here because this is the podcast for lifters, and I want to answer your questions. If you like this podcast, please like, rate, subscribe. Wherever you get that podcast, leave a rating and review, drop your question in the review. Let me know what you think. Again, this is for you. So if I can be better, then it will only be better for you. So I am happy to take the feedback. I want to hear all about it. I want to hear exactly what you think. So please let me know. And until next week, lifters, I'll see you then.